Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, welcome to This is a Revolution, your weekly podcast for all things Rev Pro. I'm George, I'm here with Dave. How are we doing, friend?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm very good. I'm very much looking forward to a very busy weekend. It occurred to me, I was looking at, I'm driving to Birmingham on Friday night, so I'm watching Nick Cage in Bad Seeds. And it occurred to me that I'm basically doing the exact same drive on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is a 3-hour round trip each night from my house to Birmingham and then my house to Coventry most days. But one of my little girls has decided she's going to come to Coventry on Saturday, so that'll be quite good fun.
Amazing.
So yeah, I always enjoy the wrestling with my little girl. How's your week been, mate?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Busy all week work-wise, but isn't it always? So can't complain. It's been nice and chilled. We went and did some cultural stuff at the weekend and went to the cathedral and had all these lovely images displayed on it. And then we continued that culture by going to watch Paddington 3 at the cinema. So, yeah, it was a lovely chilled weekend, which I say, as we're recording on Wednesday, the weekend only feels like 2 minutes ago. But
always.
Very much looking forward to next week when I have a 3-day week. So
nice. What? Have you just got a couple of days holiday?
Yeah, so I booked Monday off originally because, as I mentioned on this channel before, I was going to do an AEW podcast, and I decided to knock that one on the head, as we've discussed. So I had the day booked off on Monday to do a Full Gear review, because I think that's this weekend. And then I just thought, I'm just not going to cancel the day. I'm just going to keep it. So I've got Monday off, and then I've got Friday off. We've got the day off because we're going to do a shopping trip, and like Christmas is coming up and stuff like that. I want to find some new trainers, but I think I'm taking the missus to. We're gonna go to where AEW was. I'm trying to say it not too loudly so she doesn't hear me through the walls and the floorboards, because I'm kind of treating it as a bit of a surprise, but taking her somewhere she's never been before, and might go there. Might go back to a certain barbecue restaurant as well, Dave. So
Mate, that was so good.
Absolutely, it was good, wasn't it? So I won't lie, that may have informed like half my decision about going back there. Like I'm not even joking.
I really like. I won't say it in case you can hear you. But I really like that city. I've visited there quite a lot over the last couple of years because my brother-in-law lives there. So like there's loads of characters, loads of stuff to do, loads of different parts to it. So I bet you'll have a lovely time, mate.
Absolutely, it's a dynamite city after all. So Dave, this weekend, as you've alluded to, we've got 2 shows to cover.
Yeah.
All though as part of one overall tournament. You know what? I've said to you this before, right? Trios not my thing, but I'm really looking forward to this weekend as well. Like, it feels something a little bit different in the calendar, and I think that's what I love about independent wrestling. Right? We've spoke about this with Rev Pro a lot, about how they are an independent company, but they operate outside the confines of what a normal, regular independent was. And I read on Twitter this past week, I think that by the end of the year, Rev Pro will have done 46 shows throughout the year, which, when you sit and think about it, you go, yeah, that's almost on par with like a weekly TV company, right? Like a weekly TV company, if you have one show, will have 52 shows a year, plus big events on top of that. You think of the first year of AEW's existence, right? If you're just counting Dynamite plus the 4 pay-per-views throughout the year, there's only 10 shows fewer in this schedule to what AEW was doing, which is crazy to think of. But that's where like having all of that and is allowing like the scope and the time to do stuff like this, because again, we talk about like a more traditional schedule, like with a Progress or something like that. If you took like a month to do this month is going to be just a random trios tournament, it would feel like, oh my god, like there's so much you're potentially losing out on here.
Yeah.
Whereas this is just another weekend for Rev Pro before we've got this, and then before you know it, it'll be back at the 229 and back in Southampton, all of those places. And yeah, there's so much going on, so much to look forward to. And look, I don't think anyone could disagree that this weekend isn't value for money, right? Like, it's insane value for money.
Nuts. Like, I keep sharing. So on the Rev Pro Instagram channel, I keep sharing the price breakdown because it is like absolutely balmy. Like, you can get like general admission, which is anything except the front row. You can get it for both days for less than what an average wrestling show ticket costs. When you're looking at like a company like this sort of size, like it's incredible. And like, if you're like, I'm taking my daughter, I'll be able to. I can get her. Her ticket will cost like barely anything. So she'll get an under 16 general admission ticket, and it'll probably be like 12 quid or something. So it costs that to go to the cinema with her.
Yeah.
It's such good value, mate. And then you look at, like, it doesn't look like we're going to get a tag league this year, right? Because there's not enough dates left in the
I would
year.
say so. Yeah.
If you think this is for this year, this is replacing the tag league, I'm assuming. But it feels so much. It does feel really fresh because, like, none of these teams are what. I don't think really anyone's predicted these teams apart from like CPF, who were like an obvious like bet for it. But also, none of the teams feel completely like random or out of thin air. They're all just like, ooh, that's a cool, unique trio. Like, you look at like JJ Gal, Robbie X, and Zachary Wentz. Like, that's a really cool, unique trio. But it also makes like sense because Robbie X and Zachary Wentz have tagged in the UK together. Like, they're the Burning Heart champions, aren't they? Tag champions.
Of course they are. Yeah.
And then you've got JJ and Robbie, who've tagged a couple of times this year. Like, they're not a regular tag team, but they're clearly on the same sort of page.
Yeah.
So what a cool way to bring those three guys together. And then you've got like the Viva España team, the Barcelona Blacklist with Zazaya, which just looks like we've been clamouring for Barcelona Blacklisting to come over to the UK since the April show in Barcelona.
This is a bit I'm jealous about.
Yeah, and then there's so much cool stuff to it, which I'm really excited for, and I love a tournament. I absolutely adore them. To get to see what I consider to be like a classic tournament, where it is. Well, I grew up with King of the Ring, and I used to love. And I get that you can't do it I don't think you can do it well in 2024. The classic 4 matches, then a semi-final, then a final, all in one night. To ask the guys for how much they put into a wrestling match these days, to ask somebody to go out and perform 3 times in one night is asking a lot. Then also the fact that with independent wrestling, you can have loads of people there that aren't as familiar with the product, and to see the same person wrestle 3 times in a night might not appeal to them. They might want more variety. So I get that they don't really happen very often anymore, but this feels like a really good compromise for it. We're going to get 4 quarterfinals on Saturday, and then on Sunday, 2 semi-finals and a final. So there's so much potential to tell, like, within the tournament stories. I used to love the when somebody's had their leg worked on in the quarterfinal, and then they're selling the leg throughout the semi-final and final. If they go all the way, like, I love those like little stories. I'm really fascinated about like Maverick Mayhew in particular going into this tournament, because last time we saw him, he was getting belittled and berated by Connor Mills and really kind of like bullied in front of the 229.
Yeah,
and it feels like that was laying the seeds for whatever his weekend's going to look like. I love the idea of him being perceived to be the weak link in CPF, but him having like a big moment, either a big moment that wins CPF the tournament or gets them to the final, or that costs them the tournament or costs them a place in the final. Like, there's just so much to kind of play with, and it's nice to be going to something different. Like, full disclosure, we're recording this Wednesday night, so at the moment we know that Spectral Envoy are facing they're facing Robbie JJ and Zachary Wentz, I believe.
That's correct.
And then the Flying Leland brothers, Bryant brothers. Leland Bryant. Yeah, making up my own team now. The Flying Bryant brothers are facing CPF. We know that. We don't know what the dynamic of the other two matches are, but when this comes out on Friday, everybody will know. So we're kind of going a little bit blind in there. And we know that Mercedes Blaze and Chantel Jordan have been booked for a match. And I'd imagine there'd be 2, maybe 3 more matches for the Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do about the Sunday, if I'm honest. I don't know. Do you keep... I imagine a lot of the guys that are eliminated on Saturday will appear in matches on Sunday. So you can't confirm those matches in advance. So I wonder if they'll just give us one really tasty looking match for Sunday and then let the rest of the card formulate around it, or whether they'll give you the non-tournament, like a couple of matches. You know you've got the tournament final. That's the draw in itself, isn't it? And then just let a couple of things work spontaneously. It'll be interesting to see.
It's also worth noting as well that Progress have a show this coming Sunday as well in Manchester.
There's a lot of shows this weekend.
This is the famous weekend that everyone's booked against each other, isn't it?
Yeah, and even like Oku's wrestling in America this weekend.
Oh, of course he is, yeah.
So loads going on. But again, I quite like that because, like, when you go to Rev Pro as often as I do, and as often as a lot of guys do, there's lots of people that go to all the 229s, and lots of people that go to all the Southamptons, and lots of people that go to all the Sheffields. Like, it's nice to see people coming in and getting a crack at it.
Yeah.
Like, you think, we sung the praises last week of Jay Joshua. And, a few months ago, he was the person coming in and getting his opportunity. We might come away from this weekend, everybody just singing the praises of the Bryant brothers. Like, that's a match that I'm really excited for. Barcelona Blacklist are going to be really looking to impress. Damiao, who's wrestling with Francisco and Santos, will be looking to impress because, he's now seen the path of how you come into Rev Pro from from the continent. And lots of cool story to go. I'm really intrigued. Have you got any thoughts on who you would pair up the other 2 quarterfinals? We've got Leo, Leon, and Cameron. We've got Francisco, Santos, and Damiao.
Yeah.
And then we've got
Viva España.
Viva España. Yep. Who's the last team that I'm not thinking of?
Oh, that would be Starshine Machine.
Oh, of course, yeah. Starshine Machine.
So, I think what would work really well in both of these, actually, because you've got you've got one here where it's just you could pair up. You've got stories in both of them.
Leon, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about it. Leon, Leo, and Cameron against Viva España, because you're telling that story at the minute with Zazaya and with Leon Slater. So that could be one there. And that, we'll talk about the tournament proper in a moment, but that would be a good match there. And also Starshine Machine, you're revisiting already against that one, looking at who we've got there. Eroish Dumar. That's that could be a really good match there because you're revisiting the David Francisco, Charles Samuels. Now, they could do it
And you've
completely
also
opposite.
got the Francisco and Sunshine Machine dynamic, which is
Of course you do, yeah.
interesting as well, right? You've got like a really obvious storyline that it links to, and then a more subtle storyline it links to.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going to predict that they're the two that are we booked. So by the time everyone hears this, we'll know if they're the two matches or not.
Yeah.
But they feel like the two that it should be.
Yeah. So what I reckon we should do then, Dave, we've got our 8 teams, right? And as you've said, we know half the bracket. We're predicting what we think the other half of the bracket is going to be to give us our first round. So let's have a look at the tournament, and maybe let's have a think of, we'll do a quick rundown of the teams and just give a very quick instant thought of what we're thinking of the teams, what we're excited for with them, all of that sort of stuff. Then maybe let's look at who we think is going to win, where we think the big shocks of the weekend might come. Let's also see if we can predict something that outside of the tournament that we think could happen, a shock that we think could happen, or something that we think could come in. Because what's really interesting about this weekend as well is there are going to be people, like you said, who are going to be competing in these different companies, right? Through and if you don't want to get spoiled on anything of who's where to keep it fresh, that's cool. Like, we're not going to give away anywhere who's working where, just putting obviously out there that there are shows going on. So you might see people who are contracted to other companies who are going off and doing other things. But it does make it special in the sense that because there's so much going on, someone could go after that double booking payday, right? I mean, fucking hell, if you're Connor Mills, you might go for a triple booking payday. We've seen him do that one before. But let's run down the teams then. So I've got them in front of me. So we'll start with Hiroshi Dumas, Dave Francisco, Golden Boy Santos, and Damiao. How is that one striking you?
I like it immediately because it's unique, but it's not random. You've got Francisco and Santos who have been tagging together for a while and are they're a package in Rev Pro now. It's an introduction to Damiao, who is someone that I'm not familiar with. Not even sure if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, so if I'm not, my apologies.
Well, Dave, if you're pronouncing it incorrectly, we're going to blame YouTube because that's where we found the pronunciation.
Right, we definitely were doing some let's just check how are we pronouncing some of these names.
We're giving it a good go.
We want to come across a little bit less, culturally ignorant than we may well both be. Have you been to Portugal before?
I've been once as part of a cruise. I was in Lisbon on a day trip.
That is once more than me. And I can't believe it. My missus has been to Portugal and she's been to about 5 countries in her entire life. So the fact that she's been to Portugal and I've not bothers me slightly. So
maybe we need to go and do a podcast out there, Dave.
Mate, honestly,
if Hiroshi Dumas win,
we'll go to Portugal. Deal.
Yeah, on David Francisco, Golden Boy Santos, and Damiao with their money that they're going to be winning from this.
Mate, on a little sidetrack, so we're currently in the process of selling my dad's house, and it looks like it'll probably not be that difficult to do, and it's like the first time in my life where I'm like, might actually come into some money. I've never had any money, never struggled for money because I've always done quite well from teaching. I kind of rose up through the ranks of teaching quite quickly, like being heads of year, head of subjects, leadership team, that sort of thing. And but always had weddings to pay off. Kids cost money. I've got 3 of them. Whose idea was that? The missus. So yeah, for the first time, I'm like, oh, I could be a little bit more kind of free with the money. And then it dawned on me that I literally do everything I want already. But then I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do the Rev Pro European tour? I quite fancy the trip to Berlin to see GWF and Rev Pro, a trip to Barcelona, a trip to France. Let's get me linked up with a French company. That was on the Q&A last week, wasn't it? Let's get them in Portugal and go and watch that. Let's fly out to America and watch them out there. So yeah, maybe this could be the first one. I'm not going to try and say it as smoothly as you say it, but if Heroish Damar were to win, this will be our first one. We'll go out to Portugal.
Absolutely.
I hope that I hope they win their first match.
Mm-hmm.
This is a team that I want to see in the second round. I want Santos to have a victory. He's not had many. I feel like you want, in this tournament, it's often the case, right? It was the same with the J Cup. It's going to be babyface heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get a heel team running, all the way through, trying to play spoiler. So I like that idea. I'd quite happily have them go all the way through to the final.
Yeah, same.
I haven't really explored it too much in my head because we haven't seen the full bracket, and I like to do this authentically so that when we come on, we're talking about it properly for the first time, and I'm thinking about it for the first time. But I definitely want to see them go through the first round. The issue with that is we're kind of booking them against Starshine Machine. So maybe this is a reason not to book them against them, because it would be nice for them to face Starshine Machine on Sunday in the semi-final, because I definitely feel like they should go through the first round as well. I really like the little story that they're telling, because, again, some people in Rev Pro just work really fucking hard to make everything that they do relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is TK, Mambo and Shah is kind of a team that nobody would have thought of a couple of weeks ago as being in the trios tournament. No one was touting to put them together. I wasn't expecting Sunshine Machine to be in the tournament at all.
No.
They weren't a team that I was like really kind of considering. So, you could say like, cool, they're there. They're there to, I hate to say, make up the numbers. But, they're there as another team.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the other teams that are already there are going to be the focal point of it. Like CPF, you would expect to be a focal point of it because they're an established British trio.
Of course, yeah.
People like Zazaya and Leon Slater and Leo Rush are all part of current storylines in Rev Pro,
mm-hmm.
where they can explore that further in this tournament. And Sunshine Machine and Shah aren't really. So they've made themselves part of it.
Yeah.
By saying we're in it because we want to get Shah Samuel's undisputed British Heavyweight Championship match.
Yeah.
And I love that because now I'm invested in it, because now I want Shah and Sunshine Machine to win.
Yeah,
and I win more than anybody else because I want to see Shah get that title shot. I don't think they will. I don't think they will. I just think that's Shah, TK, and Mambo like making the most of the situation and like making sure that their match is as relevant as possible, giving it some story because they're workers and they're working. Mm-hmm. And Shah does this all the time, doesn't he? Like he literally makes everything that he's involved in something for people to care about.
Yeah.
And Shock, everybody cares about Shock. Like he's one of the most like charismatic people in Rev Pro and one of the most universally beloved people in Rev Pro. So yeah, I love all of that. I quite like the idea. So if we did, let's rewind a little bit. If we kept them separate,
mm-hmm.
What does that give us? That gives us Starshine Machine. Oh, see, now this is complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because that breaks up the Zazaya and Leon Slater match.
And do you know what? That could be a route that we go. We could go that route where you're breaking it up to then get to one of those stories, right? So we've got two options here. We play out both stories, which we know Red Pro are happy to do, or we give we could play out one of these stories, but which one are we going to do? Which again, Red Pro will do. I think for this weekend, I genuinely think that they'll just go with, like you said, it's a family kind of weekend. So they're going to, in my mind, it would make sense to do the ones which have got the match heat already behind it. Okay? In my mind. But then also I'm saying that out loud, I could go, Viva España versus is it Men of the Hour? Like that's a banger match to put on in front of people who aren't going to be as familiar with the product, right? Because like those 6 men, what they can go in there and do. So already I'm changing it over in my head.
What if Viva España take on Francisco Santos and Damião, and Leon Slater costs Viva España, and he leans into that heel side of him that we were starting to see in the 229, and then we get a bit of the Zaya storyline, and we get both the Shine Machine versus Hero Estamar match on Sunday, and we get a bit of our cake and eat it too.
That is a good way. Yeah, that could be done. I
love this though. I love the fact that it's not so blatantly clear what they're going to do. There's lots of different avenues they could go down.
It all makes sense, and like you just said there, we've gone with what we think makes sense, but then straight away you've come up with another suggestion of how you can do that, but then have this make sense. So this is where my mind's going, right? I think I agree with you. It's important for Hiroshi Damar to have a win. I think Francisco especially, like since turning heel and really in this character, relying so much on his personality. And you know, sometimes when you get those wrestlers that they're able to rely so much on their personality because they're so good at it, that actually you can sneak losses onto them because they're just so. And Santos is doing that thing where he's going up against someone like Luke Jacobs. So even though he loses, it's against the top guy. Like you're protecting almost what we refer to as the JJ Gale effect, right? You're going up against people who are so much above where you are that actually the losses don't matter as much. So I think a win here is good for them. With the story that's also going through with Josh James at the moment, right? It's very clear that Shah's put himself above Josh James because he wants to go on and win the title for himself, right? You'd think he goes on to win the title for himself because you get the match of your choosing. Shah spoke about wanting to get to York Hall. He's been a champion before. Why wouldn't he want to be the champion again, right? So you're already playing that out where, like I said, you've got Josh James taking the picture of the three of them, and then they lost the match because he's overreached. What if they go out first round because Shah loses? Okay, so all of that effort he put into this to even get there in the first place, and it means nothing because he's lost first round. Do I think that is likely? No, I don't. But I think that's whatever the result is, where I think it's going, myself, I think it's playing into the downfall of good guy Shah Samuels. You know, the guy who was getting down to 205 because he wanted to be a cruiserweight and, you know, I want to hold all the titles, be a Grand Slam, yay, smiling. No, the guy's a fucking lean killer now. Right, that's what he's turning. He's turning into the leanest version of the East End Butcher you've ever seen. And that's where I think it's heading, or that's where it's certainly the breadcrumbs are leading me down that track at the moment. So I think
quite like the idea that if Hiroshi Damar beat Shine Machine, that we could get Francisco and Santos versus Sunshine Machine.
Yeah.
And I also think that they could do that at Uprising. I think that match has so many layers to it that they could flesh it out and it be a big York Hall match.
Yeah,
because you can have some little promo exchanges at future shows, because we know that everybody involved there can really, really deliver, like with cadence and empathy and, you know, feeling. Like they can deliver those promos. We saw Chuck. What did we see? We saw Chuck versus Francisco and TK versus Santos in Southampton. So you could absolutely reverse it and let's see Chuck versus Santos.
Yeah.
And let's let Santos absolutely bully Mambo. Like really batter him from pillar to post.
Yeah.
Big dominant victory for Santos. And what I'd love is that you put that on early so that you then think you're going to get Francisco versus TK and TK winning to kind of, balance it. And then he doesn't. Francisco beats TK as well.
Yeah.
I really like that.
You could also have Francisco just doing that Weasley thing of trying to get them to actually defend in Southampton. Because, one, hometown hero there. Two, even though they've won there, the curse, like, you could really see Francisco trying to get... And then go, no, actually, we're going to do this at York Hall. Like, again, layer upon layer that half of this is probably just us fantasy booking and might not come out. But, again, it's all logical steps that the booking of this tournament, sitting in the moment and analysing, doesn't feel like it's out of reach and a stretch.
You can't fantasy book promotions that don't give you fun storylines that lead down, where there's multiple different paths that lead to different destinations.
Yeah.
Because, if it was a really boring and predictable promotion, there'd be no fun fantasy booking it, because everybody would be like, yeah, but we know they're not going to do that because they're going to do this because that's what they always do.
Exactly.
That's what we love, right? That's what we make podcasts about.
Exactly, mate. So on the other side of that, then the ones that we haven't got the matches for, but we're kind of thinking could happen: Viva España versus Men of the Hour.
Mate, that's pure fire. That is, isn't it?
I have a theory here. You know what this reminds me of a little bit, and it's going to be a really niche kind of thing to go back on. It reminds me a little bit of the tournament for the first ever AEW Tag Team Champions. Okay, and the opening round match was Private Party, Young Bucks, right? Where you've got one team who feel like really established, right? I mean, I know Cameron Kai's the young guys that might take up. I mean, they're all young guys, right? But in terms of how long they've been out there doing things, I think Lio Rush is the oldest in this match at a mere 30 years old. Right, so you've got like him with all his experience. You've got Leon, who, despite being as young as he is, loads of experience, right? So that feels like your established team. Cameron has established himself as well. He established himself as a contender in Rev Pro for the Cruiserweight title. Barcelona Blacklist.
You got loads of history between these three men, right?
Yep.
Leon and Leo have wrestled twice in Rev Pro before. Leon and Cameron forever have felt like they're in one another's orbits. Mm-hmm. They've tagged together. They've wrestled against each other. Leon's always had Cameron's number.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the whole kind of Cameron and Leo dynamic that stemmed from Sheffield into Global Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like what you're putting down here. I really like the idea of Viva España beating them in this big shock.
Yeah.
But what also you can then have some like kind of finger pointing within the Men of the Hour team. Because if we lean into Leon going down a more aggressive and potentially long-term heel route,
mm-hmm.
him having beef with Lio Rush and Cameron Kai, which could lead to a heel Leon Slater versus Lio Rush,
mm-hmm.
which is different to what we've seen in their first two bangers.
Yeah.
And a heel Leon Slater versus Cameron Kai. Mate, I'd be well up for that.
Yeah, and if I was booking it, I would have it be Leon Slater that takes the fall.
Yep.
I would have it as a pin, but I would have it by way of Barcelona Blacklist doing their double teaming, which I think is basically the double team version of how Leon Cage does his move off the... I can't remember exactly. It's like a double team version of that. And then have Zazaya hit his move afterwards as well. Like, do all like to pin Leon Slater.
Kind of overkill. So like Leon's, he's been defeated by
you're hitting your super finisher buttons, yeah.
But he also then has the gripe with the other two, mate. I really like that.
And you come out of a show where Zazaya couldn't pin him. Well, Zazaya now has pinned him, but it's taken 3 men to pin him.
Yeah.
So you're going into
also that ties in perfectly to an Iron Man match, right? Because
exactly.
in an Iron Man match, you're going to need, realistically, Desire's going to have to be able to pin Leon Slater multiple times.
And that's the thing with Iron Man matches, right? Is that we set the precedent here that he couldn't pin him in half an hour. So you're going to do one of two things. You've got to establish the fact that, okay, you couldn't pin him in half an hour. So that first half hour of the match, right, there's going to be no pins, right? Because if you're then suddenly reverting to pins happening before the half an hour, you're referring to, obviously, to WWE style tropes where, oh, it's an Iron Man match, so suddenly like the ability to pin him is like just gone up tenfold. But if you can then find a way to establish that a pin can happen, now you've got this into the canon that actually he is pinnable. He just wasn't on that night, but he is pinnable.
Yeah. I really like it, mate. I really like it. They're now, for me, the two matches that I'm hoping to see. If the match graphics drop, and by the time everyone's listening to this, we were wrong and they're not the matches they choose, one of these two things could still happen by way of the semi-final on Sunday.
Yeah.
We could still get Viva Espana versus Men of the Hour, and we could still get Shine Machine versus Hiroshima. So, yeah, I'm even more excited now. What do you make of the two quarterfinals that we've got already? Who are you backing to come out there victorious?
Okay, so I'm expecting in the match with Heart, Soul, Rascal versus Spectral Envoy. I think that's obvious that it's going to be a Spectral Envoy win. No, I'm kidding. That to me, look, I think it's great that these guys are on there. I'm not going to pretend like I've heard their names before. I'm not going to pretend to be familiar with any of their work. I've heard a lot of names. I think the one that I know the most of, and this is a niche reference here, I used to play a wrestling booking game back in like 2004, and Halla Wicked was one of the names. It was like the indie names that you could pick up and was like supposedly really talented, and I bring him for my WWE Cruiserweight division. That was about it. That's all I can actually remember. Not very familiar. Like, I think these guys fall under the PWG era that was just at the time so hard to be able to watch if you weren't living in America, because obviously they have no streaming services, so you didn't have the digital way of downloading shows and all of that. So it's a bit harder to see, but the reaction to them was great. So I'm happy for everyone that gets to watch them. Happy to see what they were all about, right? That's a really good thing about this weekend for me, is whether it's Damiao from Hiroshima, Spectral Envoy, the Flying Bryant brothers, who I've just never had the opportunity. I think I may have seen them, two of them at
Riot
Cab. That was it. I was going to say Pro Wrestling Chaos, and I knew it wasn't one. Yeah, I think I've seen a couple of them at Riot Cab. And if that was who I saw, then impressed. But again, these are what people like actually seeing in a Rev Pro ring as well. It's different seeing them elsewhere. So yeah, Heart, Soul, Rascal. Can't say that I was expecting Zachary Wentz, and I was like, this is really random in some ways. But then you off air said to me, you're like, well, actually no, because in Burning Hammer, and like we're now taking lore from other companies and going, here we go. Like you got to think that that was done on purpose. Like it wasn't just that he's available, so let's take him for this. Like you got the Robbie X connection there. You got Robbie X and JJ. I don't see anything but those guys winning this match, and I think it's just going to be a great match.
I think so for me, I don't know Spectral Envoy very well at all. I know that they're like Chikara legends, and that Chikara had the King of Trios.
That's what I was thinking of, Chikara, not PWG.
It's a nice little nod to a trios tournament of past. But I'm always really interested when I don't know a lot about a wrestler. I sometimes like to stay completely ignorant and then just go in blind and see what happens. Sometimes I like to do a little bit of research, and sometimes I like to pay attention to what other people are saying about them. And the thing I noticed was when Spectral Envoy were announced, it wasn't, my timeline didn't get filled up with loads of wrestling fans being excited to see Spectral Envoy. It filled up with a load of wrestlers being excited to see him. I remember like Kid Lycos, like kind of purring over the booking, and a couple of other guys, and it was just like, I think there's a lot to be said when some people are like wrestlers, and some people are kind of like they've got this like cult following of people that grew up watching them. I suspect that's what the case is here, and I'm really up for that. I'm always up for seeing new people. I do think that the Heart, Soul, and Rascal team looks like the more can be done with that team if they win, because in knowing that if you win a quarterfinal, you're going to be in a semi-final, and that you can tell a story in the semi-final that might lead, what might Robbie X be doing at Uprising? We don't know. Is JJ Gow? Look, JJ Gow is probably on a collision course with Charlie Sterling, either for Uprising or around Uprising. Like that's what he's tied up with. So I'd say that Heart, Soul, and Rascal win so that we can get something between Robbie and somebody else in a semi-final, or Charlie Sterling again interrupts and costs JJ like he did at Global Wars. Or maybe Robbie X coming back from Japan, Bullet Club Robbie X, is not the team player that he was when he last wrestled with JJ. I want to say that was Raw Deal in Stevenage against Young Guns. Last time they tagged together.
Opening
and they
match.
also tagged in Sheffield against Ridgway and Mills around the same time. And they worked really, really well. They lost both matches, but the dynamic was good, and there was no finger pointing when they lost. They came in together, they left together. Is Bullet Club Robbie X the same Robbie X? So that would be interesting to see. I don't think the way Bullet Club is now, I don't think there is any reason why we can't still have Robbie X exactly the same as he is in England. And when he goes out to Japan, he just cranks up the aggression a little bit. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he comes back and we lean into a more aggressive and war dog-esque Robbie X.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really curious. I'm happy either way. But it adds, I always talk about it. I literally say it. I feel like I say it every week. You always want there to be in a match an interesting story for option A, where wrestler X beats wrestler Y, and option B, where wrestler Y beats wrestler X. Even when it is Will Ospreay versus Michael Oku at high stakes, and you are 99% certain that Michael Oku is going to beat Will Ospreay, you want there to be that seed of doubt, and to be able to think, well, if Ospreay does win, what does that landscape look like?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
here, I'm fairly confident that it makes no sense for them to come in, wrestle their match, go out on their backs, and Robbie, JJ, and Zach Wentz to go through. But I like the fact that there are reasons why I can see that not happening as well.
Yeah, nice. Leads us to the final match of the opening round. CPF versus the Flying Bryant Brothers.
Yeah, that is... so again, I've not seen the Bryants. I've seen them at shows. I know that they've been around Rev Pro for the last couple of months. I'm not sure who. I don't know whether I'm seeing Nino, Xander, or Leyland. I'm not sure if all three of them have been there or if it's just the same one. I sound proper ignorant here when it comes to, three similar-looking brothers. But I've had them recommended to me by a lot of people at Rev Pro. And whenever people do that, I always make note in my head. I'm like, cool, I like that. I've been given a name. I shall look out for them. But I also then am put off going to watch their stuff in other companies because I want to see the Rev Pro version of them. Do you know what I mean? Like, if somebody came to me and were like, "Oh, you should check out this girl Sapphire Reed," before she came into Rev Pro, and then I go and watch some Sapphire Reed stuff where she's working babyface, and then she comes into Rev Pro as a heel. I want to see the Rev Pro version of her kind of exclusively. And then afterwards, I can go and do a bit of exploration. So I'm really, really cute, really interested to see the Bryants. I know that a lot of people are excited. Like, and again, it's cool when you see like who's getting involved in commenting on social media. Like Vaughn Vertigo, he was one of the ones that popped up my timeline yesterday, being like, "Oh, this match is going to bang," and you're like, "That's cool." Like, he obviously knows the guys from when he came over from Canada and worked on shows with them. Like, it adds a bit of excitement to it. I think for me, this tournament is made for I don't feel like it has been made for CPF, but it feels made for CPF. Like, I always think that there's all the promotion work for it talks about this being the inaugural Trios Grand Prix. So I'll tell you what, literally having just said that, given that it's the inaugural Trios Grand Prix, probably makes Spectral Envoy the favourites, the team we just dismissed. Because if you look at the J Cup, the first ever J Cup winner, when you look at, Andy's, I listened to the last ever episode of the A Squad podcast today. I've completed it. I'm gonna mourn it now. But when you listen to Andy on podcasts and in interviews and on the A Squared, he always talks about how the first time you do something, you bring a big name for people to buy tickets for and remember, and then the next time you make them come back for your stuff.
Yeah.
First ever anniversary show, at the Copper Box, Shingo versus Will. This year, Jacobs versus Oku.
Yeah.
From the J Cup with Jushin Thunder Liger winning the J Cup to Robbie X winning and Michael Oku winning. Like, you let these things evolve. So on one hand, you could say Spectral Envoy are the favourites because they're the most established historic trio here. But from the most established British trio, CPF are the one, aren't they? Like, they're the most established trio in British wrestling.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a really good, a good path for them. On the other hand, you could do your private party Young Bucks moment with the Bryant brothers, and you could also have the Maverick Mayhew story continue by them not winning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested in all different avenues it goes. For me, us having now broken it down, I would go CPF over the Bryant brothers. The Bryant brothers look class, but CPF win.
Yeah.
I'd have Robbie, JJ, and Zach Wentz over Spectral Envoy. I feel like, given that JJ Gal and Robbie X lose as often as they do in Rev Pro, it's always good to give them a win. When you can just give them like a win that doesn't damage anybody else, just for just so that we don't get constantly drawn into the idea of these guys are like serial losers. What is it Jose Mourinho called Arsene Wenger? He called him like an expert in losing. You're a professional loser. And like, you understand the point where it's like, these guys are obviously class at wrestling, when we forget about the predetermined side of things. But one of their biggest strengths that is also difficult for them is they're so bloody good at losing.
Yeah.
They can lose these matches and they don't lose any of that aura, and they can continue to be still get the great reactions from the fans.
Yeah.
So I feel like it would be good for them to get a victory. I really like the idea of Viva Espana going over Leo Rush, Leon Slater, and Cameron Kai.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like the Francisco Santos and Damiao going over Sunshine Machine and Shaw Samuels.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think they're the four that I'd take through to the semi-finals.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with all of that. I think all of those make sense to me. CPF, the reason for me CPF go through, if nothing else, is, I mean, I know you got the Spectral Envoy there, same as well, but like you said, your really established British trio is CPF, right? And we're a British company, so we have to have like a really established British. Yes, the Flying Bryant brothers are obviously a trio. It makes sense why they're there, but CPF are the trio. Like when we saw the trio tournament cup, we said CPF. So I would agree with all of those. I'm not going to talk too much on the semi-finals. Other than just give my quick thoughts on them before we talk about who we think the finals will be. I would have the semi-finals be Viva Espana going over Robbie, JJ, and Zachary Wentz. I think the benefit of having Zachary Wentz in the company, there would be a time when having someone like him means his stock and notoriety would mean he would have to win. Actually, the way RevPro is now and how much of a destination is becoming, he actually screams to me as the perfect person to be the person to take the fall in the match, because then you're protecting Robbie and JJ from doing that. Especially now, Robbie going out to New Japan, that gives him a bit more stock as well. Plus, that has match of the weekend written all over it again. Like, if you go with the banger match route with Men of the Hour versus Viva Espana, do the same there, replicate that. Then in the other match, you've got Hiroshi Damar against CPF. I think that really gets a chance to highlight the character skills of Francisco. You get to really highlight the big, powerful nature of Golden Boy with these guys who are just going to bump and sell and
those
fly
boys
for
would
it.
bounce off him, wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'd have that. And how I would take those, so Viva Espana into the final, CPF into the final. That's how I would do it. Two babyface teams into that final. What about you? What does your route look like?
100%. I'm not adding anything to what you just said because you sold me that perfectly. Who do you have winning?
I think CPF. So
I don't have an answer for that.
Oh, don't know if that would have been picked up. So that is my Alexa I have sitting next to my desk, right? Which was even funnier is it will only respond to... did you hear it say, I don't have an answer for that? Is that what you were laughing at? Yeah, so it only reacts if I say the name. I didn't say the name. But what's even funnier is you are on headphones, right? So that has not come out loud. So at the point of you...
She just wanted to join the conversation.
At the point of you asking, she doesn't know. And look, I think there'll be a lot of people that go, I don't know. Now, I think this builds up nicely to the Mills storyline. Okay? Mm-hmm. So there's clearly something there between Mills and Mayhew. Okay? Obviously, you've got that history there between the two of them. Do you then get CPF going with one? So we want to call our match your call, and then they're deciding between like the three of them. Well, who's going on to do it? Well, it's Joe Lando and Danny Black that go on to do it. So then that builds tension between Mills and Mayhew there as well. So like,
I haven't thought about the fact that another way of looking at it, like if we were to go all the way back to the beginning of the podcast, instead of us looking at the teams and which storylines can be fed into, we could look at who's got the best storyline coming out of the winning team get to call their shot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure who CPF call their shot at if they win. I'm not sure if Barcelona Blacklist win, that makes a lot of sense. They can call their shot at, because Desire has Leon Slater already. Sanchez and Torres could call for Sunshine Machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody gets their big York call moment. I'd like the idea that if CPF win, they could go after the tag belts, but that just leaves Mayhew as a bit of the odd man out. I like that.
So
storyline.
Mayhew still gets his match, but what is his match going to be? Does Mills basically goad him into it that it ends up being Mills and Mayhew at York Hall?
And I'd love that to happen, and then I'd quite like to see Mills squash him. You know, and it become this like maybe not an uprising, just at another show, and then it lead even more into Mayhew like building up to a comeback. But, you know, be more of a long-term story.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting, because if you look at the other teams, I don't think any team has a really obvious, if we win, this is what we're going to ask for.
Yeah.
Except Shah Samuels. And even then, you don't know what Sunshine Machine lasts for.
Yeah, because you would think as well, Arush Damar, like, you'd go, well, clearly they're going to go after the tag team titles, right? Francisco and Golden Boy. But no,
Francisco might just turn around and say, fuck that, I want Luke Jacobs.
Exactly, because what has he always said? We've said this many times on the podcast. The champion.
He said it here on the podcast, didn't he? You go after the champion.
So does then that get him going after Luke Jacobs and Golden Boy and Damiao happy with that and go, well, we're going to be the tag team of the group now.
Yeah.
Or are they, is Golden Boy not? What if Golden Boy says, actually, I almost got the better of Luke. I want another shot. I want another crack.
I'm so up for this now.
Yeah.
I love the fact that we've literally just talked all the way around it, and I'm no clearer on what I think should happen or what I think will happen than I was when we started. All I know is there's about 5 different routes that I'm really excited for.
And that's it, right? We've said it before, like, it would be great to live in the multiverse where you get to experience all of these stories going off. And no matter what direction they go with it, I can't see a direction where I'm not going to be happy, or at least, like you said, trust the process. Because, look, I didn't have Shah Samuels being the guy in Sunshine Machine winning and going into this. I had Coventry and Lacey. Okay? And that didn't happen. I was like, okay. And I don't want to say it felt like a misstep. I don't want to use that word, but it felt like to me, it felt a bit of a bit on left field is the one that they say you just wasn't expecting it. That's what this one felt like to me. But then we've sat here and we've discussed it, because like you, I don't put a lot of thought into this during the week. Right? I used to, and I'd be like sitting trying to work it all out. And actually now, just sitting and discussing it on here, that's where half my ideas come up now. It's like you'll be saying something, I'll go, what if? And that's
why this is like
one
of my favourite things to do every week. It's like my favourite hour and a half of Rev Pro Markdom, getting to chat to you about it all, mate.
Absolutely, it's great fun. Episode 24.
Yes, mate.
Yeah, 24.
Right.
I know we said that
halfway through a year's worth of content.
Yeah, it's crazy, and we can only thank each and every one of you who watches, who listens. Thank you all for that. Like, this has been our rundown of this. I hope you all enjoyed that. Obviously, comment, like, share, subscribe. What would be really interesting as well is anyone who would be up for like a bit of talking to me about like what they're enjoying about how we're doing things, the way we produce. People who are solely audio listeners, as opposed to people who are just video listeners. People who might consume both. Get in touch, because, like Dave said, we're at 24 episodes now, and realistically, all I'm doing is I'm taking the audio from this and I'm putting it out there. But it'd be really interesting to speak to people just so we can look at the way we're doing things, because we're only just finding our feet now, and this is probably about 22 weeks in. So just get in touch. Let us know how you're doing. You're watching this thing, listen to this thing, because I'd love to hear some suggestions of people. I've got them. Also, you've got our handles on screen, but I am now over on the app that has the bluest of skies. So if you'd like to follow me on there, it is Run GMC. That is where you'll be able to find me over on there. It's already so lovely that there's a lot of people on there who are being nice and not. I know what you say, Dave. Mute, block, all of that. Curate the timeline. But you know what? I just get drawn into calling people dicks when they're acting like dicks, and that's my problem. So It's very much a me problem. I know I can control that, but although positive step, I did cancel Twitter Premium membership. So if you spot any, look, I only got it to try and boost our following on here. So this podcast, and I can't say I've noticed it increase.
It's funny because I got it because I wanted to be able to write longer tweets.
Yes.
And I don't write longer tweets because you still have to click the read more to read the rest of the tweet.
Yeah.
And normally that's where the link to whatever I'm promoting would be.
Yeah.
So I think I will probably bin mine off as well.
Yeah, I can't in good conscience after Elon backing Trump, even more so in the way. I just can't in good conscience contribute to that anymore. We've just come off the air, Dave, but I want to say what I think my shock of the weekend is going to be. I think we get Medusa Complex in Rev Pro. I think that is what happens. I know that Charlie Evans is in the UK. Obviously, she's out and about doing things. We've speculated on this a while. This is what I think happens this weekend.
Coventry is Millie Mackenzie's hometown, right?
Yes, it is.
She's a Coventry girl.
She is.
Mate, I am desperate to see Medusa Complex.
I think Medusa Complex
my
comes
first ever
out.
Rev Pro show had Charlie Evans on it. I didn't know Millie Mackenzie. I knew of her, but I didn't know her until she came in recently into Rev Pro, and immediately was just like, well, she's now one of my favourite wrestlers in the world.
She's been fantastic.
She is a piss and vinegar women's wrestler.
Yeah,
and that's my jam. So up for seeing them. Oh mate, I'd be so happy for that. So happy.
That is my thing that I'm just tagging on to the end of this podcast. So apologies if this seems a bit ragtag. We've just finished recording and I thought I need to get that out there because if I don't, I'll be proven right.